What do a human kidney, a desktop PC cooling fan, and a massive multinational corporation all have in common? On the surface, absolutely nothing, right? But if we look at them through the lens of modern organizational theory, they're actually the exact same thing.
Welcome to this explainer on the systems view of management. Today, we're going to demystify some pretty complex management theory by comparing it directly to everyday systems that we intimately understand, things like our own biology or the computers sitting right on our desks. And I promise you, by the end of this, you're going to look at your own workspace and the people in it in a completely new and highly structured light. All right, here's our roadmap for today. First, we'll ask, what is a system? Then, we'll check out the hierarchy of systems, break down the 4 core components, look at open versus closed systems, and finally, zero in on the manager's role.
Okay, let's jump right into part 1. What is a system? We've got to establish some foundational rules here.
So at its very core, a system is just a set of interrelated and interdependent parts arranged in a way that produces a unified whole. Think about your own body for a second. Your lungs, your heart, your brain, they're all independent organs, right? But they totally rely on each other to keep you alive. That interconnectedness creates what we call synergy, which basically just means the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Oh, and we also have negative entropy. It's a big academic word, but it just means bringing in new energy from the outside to stop the system from decaying. Just like you literally need food to avoid starving, a business has to bring in new resources so it doesn't decay and fall apart.
To really grasp the risk of having these interdependent parts, just picture your desktop computer. Inside, attached right to the processor, there's this tiny, super cheap cooling fan. Well, if that fan short circuits and stops spinning, what happens? Heat builds up fast, the processor gets way too hot, and eventually, the entire multi-thousand-dollar computer just crashes. Because one tiny component failed, the whole system paid the ultimate price. And you know what? That exact same logic applies to a business. If one small department completely refuses to communicate or cooperate, the whole organization can just grind to a halt.
Moving on to Section 2, the hierarchy of systems. Let's see how this simple rule of interconnected parts scales all the way up from the microscopic to the massive.
Notice how beautifully this biological analogy maps onto a corporate structure. We can look at systems starting from the incredibly specific, tiny, cellular level way down at the bottom, and then zoom all the way out to the highly general global level up at the top.
Let's actually walk through this step by step. Down at the absolute base, we have the cellular level. Picture an individual biological cell. It has a nucleus that holds all its vital info, so essentially that nucleus is the top manager of the cell. Now move up one step to the organic level. This is where individual cells combine to form complex organs, like your kidneys or your brain. Go one step higher, and those organs form an individual human being. Now watch how perfectly this transitions to the workplace. Individual human beings group together to form the work group level. Think of your marketing or accounting departments. Group those departments together and you hit the division level, like a consumer goods division making soaps and shampoos. Finally, scale that up across borders, and you've got the global level, a massive multinational corporation with offices in Lahore, Dubai, Paris, Sydney, you name it. The underlying logic is exactly the same, no matter how big it gets.
All right, Section 3, the 4 core components. So, how do these massive, complex organizational systems actually function day to day to get things done?
Well, every functioning system, literally regardless of its size, relies on a continuous loop made up of 4 vital steps. Step 1 is inputs, Step 2 is the transformation process, Step 3 is outputs, and Step 4 is feedback.
Let's kick things off with Step 1, inputs. Organizations absolutely need raw resources to feed the machine. This means human resources, like your managers and workers. Financial resources, basically the money you need to operate. Physical resources, which includes the buildings, the equipment, and the energy to run them. Material resources, and, super crucial in the 21st century, information resources. Let's put this into a quick story. Imagine a soap factory. To make literally anything, that factory needs financial input, cash, to buy the material inputs, like oil and caustic soda. It needs the physical input of natural gas to heat those materials up. And of course, it needs the information and the human workers to know exactly how to mix them all together properly.
Okay, so once you've gathered your inputs, you enter Step 2, the transformation process. Now, the really important thing to remember here is that transforming these raw inputs into something valuable takes wildly different amounts of time. If your organization is building a motorcycle, the transformation process on the assembly line might just take a few minutes or hours. But if you're manufacturing a commercial airplane, that process takes months or even years.
Which brings us right to step 3, outputs. The system has done its work. But what's really fascinating here is that outputs aren't just physical products like soap or cars. Outputs also cover services like healthcare at a hospital, education, or banking. They include financial results, so your profits or your losses. Importantly, they include human results. Think about staff satisfaction for a second. If your workers are totally miserable and burnt out, that is a direct, measurable output of your system. And finally, every single system produces waste. That could be discarded physical materials or even just lost time from people waiting in line.
And to complete the loop, we have step 4, feedback. You can think of feedback as the vital signs of your organization. It's the information about your results relative to the outside environment. Imagine a student taking a pop quiz. That quiz provides feedback to measure how well they're actually learning. Or think about your own body giving you a headache. That's just your biological system's warning sign that something is malfunctioning. Without feedback, an organization is flying completely blind.
Moving on to section 4, open versus closed systems. Let's see how a system actually handles that feedback in relation to the outside world.
So, management theory generally divides organizations into 2 types. First, you have closed systems. These are isolated. They just do not interact with their environment, they ignore feedback entirely, and because they don't bring in any new energy, they are prone to entropy, which, as we learned earlier, means they decay. Open systems, on the other hand, dynamically interact with their surroundings. They're constantly pulling in new energy, adapting to feedback, and because of this, they are highly adaptable and actually capable of surviving in the long run.
As you can see, in an open system, that entire core loop, inputs, transformation, outputs, and feedback, is totally enveloped by the broader environment. An open organization is constantly interacting with outside factors, things like political influences or shifting market trends. Your outputs get pushed out into the environment, and then the environment's reaction dictates what your future inputs will be. It's this constant, dynamic loop of survival.
Which brings us to our final section. Number 5, the manager's role. What does all of this theory actually mean for you on a Tuesday morning?
Well, your role is to monitor this open system. And the general rule of thumb is this: where there is smoke or pain, managers absolutely must act. Let's think back to that biological analogy one more time. If your kidney starts malfunctioning, your body sends a very clear, very unignorable signal: pain. That pain is feedback. In an organization, when a department malfunctions, it also creates pain. Maybe that looks like a massive financial loss, or a sudden spike in customer complaints, or widespread staff burnout. As a manager, you have to use that feedback loop to pinpoint the source of the pain and make the crucial decisions to fix it before the whole system halts, like that overheated computer we talked about.
So, that leaves us with a final, slightly provocative question for you to take back to your desk today. If you view your own organization as a biological system, which specific component is currently causing pain? And, more importantly, how are you going to manage it to ensure the entire system thrives? Thank you so much for joining this explainer, and we'll see you next time as we continue to decode the fascinating frameworks that shape our world.